Morning, Mike Newmeyer, game plan for retirement at Newmeyer Consulting. I hope you've seen me before, and I want to tell you this morning, and you may have already gotten a mailing, or you may have actually seen a recording on this. We have a 5.75% product, a 3-year product, a 3-year 5.75%. That's a big number, especially with rates about to go down. And today, actually, we may see a quarter point reduced by the Fed today. Okay, so 5.75 grows tax deferred for 3 years. So give that some thought. If you're interested, it's not going to be around too long with rates coming down. So my name is Mike Newmeyer, and we're at 410-902-0464. Game plan for retirement at Newmeyer Consulting. Okay, now I want to go on from there. You know, I was thinking about this, the scenario that has taken place so many times over the last 26 years talking to people about retirement. So bear with me and see if you can relate to some of this. I'm going to give you two sides as we go along of what I typically run into and have run into to people that are not converted to my way of thinking about safe money. And many of them have changed their mind. So I usually start a conversation with a person that comes to me for help in retirement, and I'll say, what have you done about retirement? And say, well, I've thought about when I'm going to retire, and I've looked at, what kind of income I'm going to get. And I'll say, well, what kind of income are you going to get? Well, I haven't really totaled it. I know I'm going to get money from my 401k, and I know I'm going to get money from my Social Security, and have a little pension, from a former employer that I left a number of years ago. And actually, I haven't checked on that lately. So basically, you're telling me you don't really know the numbers this morning. Is that correct? Yeah, I really don't know the numbers. Well, do you think that you have enough money actually saved between savings and the money you're going to get from these different, sources? Do you think you have enough money for retirement? I do think so. And you say you're 60 years old now, and you plan to retire in another 3 years. Is that correct? Yes, it is. Are you planning to start Social Security when you retire at 63? I don't know. I don't want to. I want to wait till I'm 67, and then it'll be full retirement. So you're not sure whether you're going to start Social Security, but you feel like you're going to have enough money for retirement. So again, what do you think your expenses are going to be when you get to be 63 and are about to retire? Well, I don't really know. Well, then what are you basing this idea about retiring at 63 over? Well, I just think that's a good time for me, to retire. I've worked all my life, my kids are grown, and so forth and so on. So you're basically hoping that you're going to be ready for retirement financially. Is that correct? Yes. And you're married, your wife is in the same situation. She's the same age I am. Interesting proposition, Mr. X. Do you think that you need to put more details? Do you need to put more meat on the bones in order to really know whether you can retire? Well, I haven't really thought about it. Well, do you have any kind of a plan? Well, I've thought about that, but I really haven't done anything. Now, folks, let me stop there. This is a very typical beginning conversation with people that are talking about retirement. And then let's go on. So where do you think you're going to get the money then in general? How do you think you're going to be able to do this? Do you have any other thought? Well, I've got the money in the 401k, and I'm letting it grow, and they're telling me it probably will be enough money to produce income for retirement. So you're relying on the market, you're hoping on the market that this is actually going to happen. Is that right? Yes. And you are now 60 years old. So can you remember back in 2000? Which is, 25 years ago, basically, when the NASDAQ collapsed. Yes, I remember that. What did it do to your accounts at that time? Well, it really hurt me. And how long did that take to recover? Well, I don't know exactly. Okay. So we never expected that. Is that correct? You and I didn't expect it, and most people didn't expect that to actually happen. Do you remember in 2008 and 9 and so forth when we had the Great Recession? Do you remember that? Of course. And what happened then? Well, my accounts all went down. Okay. Do you think you've ever recovered from those downturns? Well, we came back up. So it came back up, but did you ever make up for the money that you didn't get? The time value of money during those years that you did. Hello again. Now, what I want to talk about for the rest of our time today is, and I'll give you an idea of the what goes on in the past in many meetings with people that are about to retire, and maybe you can relate to some of this. Remember my phone number. It's 410-902-0464. Mike Newmeyer, Game Plan for Retirement at Newmeyer Consulting. Okay. So I'll sit down with people and they may ask me a few questions, and then I start to ask them questions because I want to get a picture of what their needs are. And so this is kind of where it goes. I might start out with a question like, I understand you want help for retirement. Is that correct? Yes, of course it is, they'll say. So let me ask you this. What have you done so far getting ready for retirement? And I'll get answers like, well, I've talked, to my wife and I have discussed retirement, and we both like to retire in another 2 years. We'll be 63 years old, and we feel like we've worked long enough and we have accumulated enough to retire. And I'll say, okay, what do you have in retirement savings? And they'll go through a list of things like their 401ks and their IRAs and so forth. And then I'll say, okay, now you've got X number of dollars. Let's say hypothetically they have $400,000 between their two 401ks. And then their IRAs altogether at this point in time are equal to $60,000. So they got 460, and they have 40,000 set aside in savings for retirement. So that's $500,000. Now, let me ask you a question. What do you think your expenses are going to be in retirement? And I'll get a blank look as soon as I ask that question. And they'll say something like, well, we really haven't added that up. And, okay, that's the first step. Because retirement dollars are always figured out based on income and expenses. So those two things have to be known. And so let's say hypothetically that you're going to spend $4,000. The national average for what we'll call middle class people in retirement is about $6,000 a month that they need to spend. But let's say that that yours is $4,000 a month. Okay. Now, how much Social Security do you anticipate when you are old enough to get? Well, we haven't looked at that. Well, let me give you this idea. You can go on irs.gov, and you and your wife can open an account there where you can get a figure on basically what they anticipate you'll be able to get at full retirement, if that's when you're going to wait for it. Or do you think you'll start it now? Because you can start it now, in 2 years, that is, when you turn 63. You can start it at 62. So you need to be aware of what those possibilities are. You need to consider those things. So, go on irs.gov and get the picture. It'll be accurate. It'll be as accurate as you can get from talking to somebody, and down at Social Security. So, okay. So there's that. And so let's say your expenses are going to be $4,000 a month. That's $48,000. Say $50,000 a year. So you've got to figure on how you can get $50,000 a year for the rest of your life, and probably consider that it's going to increase with inflation. So you need to know where that money is going to come from. And I might get a statement like this at that point. Well, we're not worried about that because we have our money in the market. We anticipate that it'll grow. Okay. So you anticipate or you hope that it'll grow. What assurances do you have? Well, I've been assured by my financial advisor that that money will be there. Well, how much money does he think you're going to be able to get a year? I'll ask. And then I'll get answer like, well, that we haven't really discussed that. So, and then I might say, well, do you have anything in writing that shows you that is going to happen? Do you have any kind of an illustration maybe, from your advisor that indicates that that's the case? How much can you actually count on? Are you in effect betting on the market is going to provide that income to you? And here's my observation at that point. I have seen people come in who are already in retirement, and they're taking X number of dollars out of the market every month. And I'll say, okay, so you're taking $3,000, whatever the number is, and I'm looking at your statements, and I'm realizing that if you simply continue that, you're going to run out of money. Have you considered that possibility? Well, my advisor says I'm okay. Well, your advisor may be, well, it may be okay for your advisor, but let's take a look at this at 3,000 a month based on what you've got, in your accounts at 300,000. Okay, so 3,000 is going to last you how many years? Okay, you're talking about $36,000 a year, and even if your account grows some, you can't make it longer than 10 years, basically. So where is the security? Do you feel secure with that? Well, we don't know how long we're going to, exactly. You don't know how long you're going to live. And if you're going to keep on taking $3,000 a month out, you better be able to guarantee to yourself that you're going to be able to continue to do that. Now, what if you could guarantee yourself income for life, and you knew it was going to be there? You have to worry about it. Would that be something that you'd want to look at? And the answer, of course, is always yes. And I've had answers like, well, that's too good to be true, and that sort of thing. And what if I told you we have products that do that? Well, we've never heard of anything like that would be an answer many times. And would it surprise you to find out that the products that we're talking about, the fixed index annuities, are in effect the go-to products today for retirement? That's what's happened. It used to be people use things like variable annuities. They're almost gone. They used to do things like just take money out of the market. That's going away because people see the fallacy in that. They realize that ultimately they could just run out of money. All they need is one of those corrections that we discussed earlier. We didn't talk about it today, but in effect, if you go back to 2008, 9, and so forth, where did the market go? We went from 24,000 a Dow down to 18,000. Huh? Now it's doubled by now, it's just about doubled. It's not quite doubled, but it's pretty much, now, we're at 45,000 on the Dow. But during that time, we had gone down. How long do you think it takes an individual to come back up to where they were if you're taking money out during that down period? Well, what about back in 2000 when the NASDAQ collapsed? It took the NASDAQ about 11 years to recover from where it was. Now, it's way ahead of that now. But what happened during all that time? What happened during the 11 years that it was down that far? What if you were taking money out of there? So the point I'm getting at is that if you're very, very wealthy, of course, it probably doesn't have much of an effect on you in terms of your living, your style of living and spending and so forth. But for the middle class folks, the people that come to me that want help in retirement, that kind of thing can wipe you out. So I suggest that we talk about the alternatives. And if you want some help, some real help, that you can look at lifetime income products that have no downside risk, where it'll be there for your lifetime. And if you're married, your spouse's lifetime. Now think about that. I have people that have been with me for 20 years. And I have to say these things over and over because I have people for 20 years that still didn't realize that their spouse was going to get that income, when they passed. And it amazes me because, of course, it's in writing in the contracts, but I reiterate it over and over and over. There's typically a 1% charge built into the product to pay for that lifetime income, and you'll never feel like the 1%. And I'll show you how that works. But it's there, and you're still netting out income for the rest of your life, very considerable. Let me give you an idea right now, okay? If you are, let's take 70 years old, and you want lifetime income, you can get 8.15%. 8.15%. Now think about that. That's $8,150 a year on every 100,000. Okay, $8,150 a year for every 100. So in this instance, if you had 5 times that, well, you got over $40,000 a year. Okay, you got over $40,000 a year. So that person that's taking the $3,600, out, or $3,000 out every month is $36,000, and you're already getting more than that here. So that means that you're guaranteed that amount. You're not going down every month. Your account's not going down. You're getting that, and it's guaranteed and promised to you by contract that you're going to keep getting. Now think about that. Get your head around that idea, because that absolutely astounds so many people. But it's real. It is absolutely real. And we'll show you how it works. And call me. I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to show you the opportunities that may be good for you. Again, Mike Newmeyer, 410-902-0464. Let me say it again. Call me today, Mike Newmeyer, 410-902-0464. Nice talking to you. Look forward to seeing you.